There's a secret to speech-language pathology that no one told you in grad school. It's that there's a hidden decision tree that effective therapists use to make their therapy decisions. Now, this is not talked about, and people that are using it may not even realize what they're doing. But once you have this decision tree in your brain, all of your therapy decisions are quicker and easier. So today on the Speech and Language Kids podcast, we are going to make it explicit so that you can see it too. I am Carrie Clark, speech language pathologist, and this is my podcast. I also am the creator of the SLK curriculum, and this is the piece that I feel like I have spent years developing because it was never explicitly made clear to me that this was a thing that people are doing. And like I said, I don't even know that everyone that's using something like this realizes that they're doing it. But once you understand this flow and this decision tree, then it makes all of your therapy decisions so much simpler. The whole therapy process is quicker and easier. Okay, so we're going to talk about today this hidden decision tree, what all the different decision points are, and how you can use this to quickly and effectively determine what a child needs to work on and how to work on it. All right, so here's the flow. I want you to imagine in your brain of brains your decision tree. It could be a big flow chart if that is how your visual mind works. Another way I like to think of this is a choose your own adventure book, which I actually have started writing. I just need to finish it. But if you imagine the books that we read when we were children, that you read for a while and then it says, okay, what are you going to do to make this choice, go to page 23. To make this choice, go to page 37, right? And it gives you options. And so this is the way my brain likes to think of it, is a choose your own adventure novel. But a decision tree, a flow chart, whatever works for your brain. Start to build this in your brain and see this as I am explaining it today. Okay, so you get the call. It's a teacher, it's a parent, it's somebody saying, hey, there's something off. The parent says, oh, my child has a speech delay. That's usually the way parents describe it. Not always. Sometimes they've done their research and they have more specific terms. Teachers often call this a processing problem. Oh, they're just having trouble processing language. I've determined that is like a receptive, like understanding is kind of how that plays out. But you'll get some sort of a vague, hey, there's something wrong, from a parent, a teacher, or maybe it comes up on one of your screenings. And so we reach here the very first decision on our decision tree, and that is which area or areas are impacted for this individual. And so we have 6 areas to choose from on this first decision diamond in our decision tree. So we have speech, which is pronunciation of speech sounds. Language, which is using words, understanding words, sentences, vocabulary, syntax, putting it all together to be able to communicate thoughts. We have fluency, which is stuttering or anything that disrupts the flow and cadence of speech. We have voice and resonance, which is the actual sound quality of the voice or ability to route the sound correctly through your mouth or nose. And so the resonance piece of it, all of those kind of bundle together. Social communication is our ability to interact socially with others and use communication effectively to navigate social interactions. And then functional communication is just our ability to get our basic wants and needs met using language and communication. Okay, so those are the 6 areas, and that is the first decision that we have to decide is which route do we need to go down. Now, for some children, you will have to go down more than one. They may have a speech problem and a language problem and a fluency problem. And so that obviously complicates things, but if we can keep this in mind and say, okay, we have a couple areas that we're looking at, then that can help us to organize our goals. When we're writing goals, it can help us to organize our therapy plans. And so there we have the first decision. Okay, so first you decide which of these 6 areas. Now, how do we decide that? Well, you can ask questions to parents and teachers. We have our screening checklists inside the SLK curriculum that specifically ask them, okay, does it look like this? Does it look like this? And they just check boxes, and that will help you determine which of these 6 areas based on which boxes they are checking. Okay, so that's an option. You can do this through your evaluations. You can look and see which tests they scored well on or not so well. So lots of different ways to gather information, but we make that first decision of which of the 6 areas. Okay. So now we're in our Choose Your Own Adventure book. Turn to page 23. We're going to go to the page for that area. For each of these areas, there is another decision tree or a continuation of the decision tree to walk you through the specific skill areas that may be a challenge. So these are sub areas. We're going one layer down on our decision tree. And so for each larger area, we can go on several different paths depending on what it looks like. Again, use the screening checklist inside our curriculum if you have access to that. If not, go sign up. It's at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. And you can use the next set of screeners or checklists to get information on, okay, you said it's speech sounds. Got it. It's the pronunciation. Is it more like this or this or this? And there's check boxes. And then you just see where those check boxes lie. You can also use your own assessment data to look at this and say, okay, was it more like this or this? And so we just follow the decision tree for that area. So I have made this explicit for me, for my brain, because this is the way I like it. It makes so much sense to me to do it this way. It's also the way I've done it, put it together and made it explicit for our curriculum because I want this to be an easy process. So I'm going to tell you what my groupings are in my decision tree for each of these 6 areas. But keep in mind, there are other ways you could organize this. There are probably people that do it. I know there are people that do it differently than me. So this is the way I have determined it makes sense. If you like this way, awesome. Go grab it out of my curriculum. If your brain works differently, though, you can group these skills differently. You can have your own decision tree. The idea is instead of trying to reinvent the wheel with every client, trying to think through, okay, well, what is it that's really impacted and how could we address this? You should have your own decision tree in your head that tells you, when it's like this, I do this. We're still customizing therapy, guys. We are still making it individualized, but we are not having to reinvent the wheel because we already know what works. There is evidence-based practices for a reason. The research shows us what works for these different areas. All we have to do is figure out which bucket to put the kid in, right? And then we customize it to meet their needs. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at, I'm going to tell you my pathways. I'm going to tell you all my little decisions, but feel free to tweak this to come up with your own or just to start thinking through what do your processes look like? Do you have some of these decision trees already in your head that you're already doing? You just haven't written them down. Okay, so first one is speech sounds. Again, that's the pronunciation. So the 4 paths I have in this decision tree, we have articulation. So that's working on single speech sounds at a time. We have phonology. So that's working on sound error patterns like dropping off all the final consonants of words or replacing all back sounds with front sounds. So phonology is the second one. I also have a decision tree path for motor speech because that therapy is much different than articulation or phonology. And that is for our children with things like apraxia or dysarthria or any sort of motor impairment where it's the actual motor production of the sounds. That's a different approach. And then I have a pathway for mumbling because what I found is that my mumblers need a different type of therapy than my articulation problems. Because usually it's not that they don't know how to say the sound, it's that they're just kind of mumbling them all together. So they have a different pathway. So those are the 4 I do in speech. Now, if you've been in this field for any amount of time, you will know you've heard of a lot more different ways that we can approach speech. And it is so great to have lots of options. For me, these are the main 4 that I see, and almost every kid that I see can fit into one of these 4 categories pretty well, and they benefit from the therapy. That simplifies my processes without having to know every single different speech sound therapy approach that anyone has ever researched, because there's no way we could know that, right? So I put mine into one of these 4 paths. If I find that these are not working, I might switch paths, or I might specifically look up for this kid, okay, what's been done to help kids that are having this type of challenge? And then yes, maybe we'll come up with a more customized plan for a child that these aren't working for, but these hit 95% of my kids. And so this is enough for me to have that decision tree in my head that says, okay, which of these 4 paths do I want to go on? Here we go. Okay, so that's speech. Language, here's the paths I have. We have following directions, asking and answering questions, sequencing and retelling. So this is like being able to tell a past event with all the details and it making sense. Grammar and syntax. Language foundations for literacy. So this is my kids who are struggling with literacy. What are those underlying language skills that are impacting that? That's this path. And then I've got abstract language, like figurative language, sarcasm, inferencing, that kind of stuff. And then vocabulary. Okay. So again, there are other nuanced language areas that we could look at, but I find that most of my language kids are struggling in one of those, 7 areas? And so those are the paths I take them down. All right, social communication. We've got social awareness and interaction, being able to be aware of others and interact back and forth, right? We've got emotional regulation and self-advocacy, which I very much consider the same skill, but on a continuum, right? We go from a little one who is trying to use words instead of having a tantrum to get what they need, all the way up through a middle schooler who has to use words to advocate for their needs in their school setting, right? So same continuum there. Conversational skills. Again, abstract language, that one comes up in social as well. So I put that one as a path on social. And then selective mutism, because just like with my mumblers, selective mutism has an incredibly different therapy pathway than any of the rest of these. So it gets its own path. But that's the decision tree for social. All right, we're almost done. Well, we're not almost done. We're halfway. Okay, fluency. My fluency decision tree. First, I have one called Foundations of Fluency. And this includes coordinating breath with speech, being aware of your disfluencies, dealing with negative emotions that come up related to fluency. So all of these kind of tangential skills are in the foundations one, the foundations path. And then I have a stuttering path, a cluttering path. So cluttering is when they speak very quickly and smush all their sounds together. That's an oversimplification, but that's the general. And then word finding. I find that my children who are struggling with word retrieval or word finding don't necessarily follow those other paths. Okay, so those are the 4 for fluency. Then we have functional communication. Remember, this was our clients who are just beginning to communicate with words. They're learning their very first interactions and being able to communicate their basic wants and needs. So for functional communication, I have 4 pathways as well. We have early interactions. So that's responding to others and a little bit of that back and forth. We have first words. So this is our children who are learning language 1 word at a time. We have shaping echolalia, which is for our Gestalt language processors who are learning language in chunks. And then we have our AAC path for our children who are not able to get words out with their mouth parts, but they would like to be able to communicate with us still. And so we give them some alternative methods. Okay, last area is voice and resonance. And so I kind of lump these together, but you'll see the 4 paths here. We have the first one is just foundations of healthy voice use. So this again includes breathing, breath support, vocal hygiene, self-awareness, all that kind of goes in here. There's a voice therapy one. There's a resonance one. So that's the nasality. And then there's prosody, which is pitch, rate, and volume. And so those are the 4 different paths for voice and resonance. Now, you could also make a path or a decision tree for executive functioning, but that's a side quest that we're not going to go on today. We're going to do that on another day. I have lots of plans for executive functioning. But these are the 6 ones that we target right now inside my curriculum that I find, again, hits most of my kids. If I have this decision tree in my head, or written down preferably, then I can funnel most of my clients into one of these pathways, okay? And that is key because now I have saved myself a ton of time and energy and brain power trying to figure out what skills they need, where I can just follow the decision tree. And then from there, we have one more decision for you to make. I know, lots of decisions, but this is how we customize therapy without it being overburdening for us, especially if we have 70, 80, 90 kids that we're doing this for. Okay, so once you've chosen the pathway, then all you have to choose from there is between 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Our beginner skills are skills when you are just developing that area, right? Asking and answering questions. I just need you to be able to answer a who question or a yes/no question, right? Very beginning level. Intermediate then is when we're getting some more nuance. We're learning how to use the skill in different ways. And then advanced is when we are using that skill functionally throughout our day, through our classwork, all of that kind of stuff. Okay? Once you've gone through that decision tree, you have a very clear idea of what that child needs to work on, right? It simplifies the therapy planning process so much. So the way this works for our curriculum in the SLK curriculum is once you go through that decision tree, and we have an interactive tool that will do this for you, or you can go through the checklists. But once you get to the end point of that decision tree, there is a goal. There is a goal written out for how you would write your goal to represent that area. And specifically, it is a functional skill, right? It is something that it is the functional outcome that we want them to master. That's the goal. Each of those goals has a packet. Each of those packets has a way to track progress on that goal, a list of the skills you need to reach that goal, or a list of the skills you need to teach to reach that goal, and then all the teaching materials you need to teach those skills. So all of that is included in our packets. We have a packet for each goal. Yes, the goals are customizable because you're saying with what percentage accuracy or how much support, or you're going to customize the goal to the individual needs of the child, but you've already customized it by going through this decision tree to say, okay, what's the actual skill that or what's the actual area we're missing, what's the sub area, and what level are we at? And then there's the goal. You just do the data probe, figure out what level they're at, write your goal from a year from now. What do you expect them to be at? And then you use the data probe once a month to track progress. You use the teaching materials to teach all the skills that they need to master that goal. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes it clearer in your mind of how you can have a decision tree that allows you to make therapy planning decisions quickly and easily, but in a way that is still individualized to the specific needs of each client. Now, if you don't want to make your own, if you like the way that I talked through this, please join us over at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. That's hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. That is where we have our full curriculum that is built around this decision tree that I just gave you today. We have lots of ways for you to interact with it and use this information to make your therapy decisions, plus all the materials that you need to teach those skills. You just print out the packet, drop it in the student folder, and you're ready to go for months of therapy. Okay, so I've made it as easy as I possibly can. All right, let me know what questions you have. I hope to see you inside the hub, and I hope to see you tomorrow on another episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast. Bye for now.